Hey guys, it is Silent Core here again, and I've got some pretty cool news regarding Old School RuneScape and Godwars Dungeon. One of the most anticipated updates to Old School RuneScape, one of the most asked for, is Godwars Dungeon, and it doesn't look like they're going to add it straight into the game as it was before. It looks like they're planning on bringing it back, but with a few tweaks, and it's really cool that they've put so much thought into how it's going to affect, the economy, the PKing. They've thought about everything and they've kind of discussed all in here and asked us for our suggestions on their kind of comments on it going into the game. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I want to say I always get comments about this in my old school videos, guys, and people always make this point. You asked for a 2007 RuneScape. Why would you want that to be updated? It ruins it. And 2007 Scape was actually a player-made phrase. It was never called a replica of 2007. It was never going to be that. It's called Old School, and the 2007 RuneScape was something that a lot of video makers started putting in their titles, and it sort of caught on. And then everybody got this whole notion that it was just going to be a clone of 2007, which is not what it is at all. Old School RuneScape is essentially an official private server, and we have the opportunity for this to be, because there was so much attention brought to it, for this to be updated with a small team and get some exclusive new stuff in it. So there is a reason to update this, there is a reason to bring it exclusive content, and there is a reason to keep this alive and keep the community thriving, and it is not just meant to be a replica of 2007, and I'm actually going to stop calling that in my videos. I'm going to always have Old School RuneScape, not 2007 RuneScape, because I don't want people to get that idea, and hopefully other video makers will start calling it Old School instead of 2007 Scape, because that's just not what it is, to be honest. So it looks like they want to bring Godwars Dungeon into Old School RuneScape, which is great. However, they don't want to kind of devaluate or make any of the old bosses dead content. So right now, the other bosses can be really good money making methods with Dragon Axes, Dagonoth Kings, and of course the Barrows minigame and all the associated rewards are quite valuable. And if Godwar's Dungeon with all, the Bandos armor, very overpowered gear, if that did come into RuneScape, it would have a big impact on the prices and, how valuable the drops were, and essentially how good money making methods killing the old bosses were. So it's likely all those bosses would be hugely devaluated, and people could just buy their way to a success in RuneScape with the Godwar's Dungeon items. So let's go down and see what they have to say about this. So they've kind of highlighted here what makes RuneScape old school is the need to work for power instead of buying it. And they make it quite clear here that in old school they want the strongest gear to be earned, not just purchased. So they're giving some examples of very powerful gear at the moment and how hard it is to get. People wanting full void. At the moment I'm going for full void and probably lunar diplomacy. So there's a lot of quests associated with that, a lot of time you have to spend to make a peak here. And if they did bring in Godwar's Dungeon as it was before, you could easily just buy yourself some of the biggest items, really. So here's a list of the tweaks that they'd like to bring to Godwars if it was added in. There will be no gravestones, adds a good money sink if people are dying. I guess that can be good and bad. It's bad because why would they want a money sink to be just people dying? It's kind of, harsh if you've worked really hard for your items. And, they've mentioned later on that a lot of the hilts and stuff will be non-tradable, meaning, you're going to be risking quite a lot of money for not a lot of reward. The Godwars dungeon loots will be completely untradeable, so the hilts and the Bandos and Armadillo armors, they'll be non-tradable. And I mean, this is pretty cool, it adds a huge value to your actual items that you've got in this game. And if you do want to go PKing and you've got a God Sword, you've really earned that God Sword from having it as a drop and being able to PK with it, rather than just saving up a lot of money or buying a load of gold off a gold farming website and just buying it, if you guys know what I mean. It looks like the only tradable things are going to be the shards, the dragon boots, and a few other small things, so there's nothing too profitable about this Godward dungeon, so it's just some of the smaller items. It also says if a player dies while wearing Bandos or Armadillo or any of the God Swords, they're not protected on death. The gods will reclaim them after a minute of being on the ground. I'm not sure why they're going to be on the ground, since they will be untradeable, so nobody else will be able to pick them up, and you're not likely to make it back there in a minute, so I'm not sure why they even lie there on the ground if they maybe just should get taken out of the game straight away. It also says at the bottom here when you're going to be creating the actual God Sword, so adding the blade to the hilt, You can either smith it yourself, so if you've got the smithing level, or you can pay an NPC to do it together, but that's going to cost a lot of money. And it says hefty, which probably means a huge sum of money. You know, to change your spawn to Edgeville, it's 5 mil. I can see this maybe costing 10 mil or something like that. It does say the game needs more item and gold sinks. I think, to be honest, EOC needs that a lot more, or RuneScape 3 as it's known now, does need a lot more money sinks than old school at the moment. So I think that's a really nicely written blog post. You know, it's even asked us to give our own opinions on shaping the future of old school, which I think is awesome. I'd still really love to see a free-to-play feature in old school. They need it. They need it. They need to get new people coming in the game. It would also have been nice to see some of these developments happen a little bit sooner. I think a lot of the hype's died down from old school at the moment. You know, the original hype, there was, you know, hundreds of thousands of people signed up to old school, and most of them have left, and it's kind of sad to see so many people have just kind of went back to RuneScape 3 or dropped out of the game completely. So feel free to leave your opinions on Godwars Dungeon in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next video.